Okay.
I don't should record. I don't see any attendees in here yet though. So that's here we go. We got some filtering in now. All right, now they're joining in. Perfect. Great. I was like,
Hooray.
okay, cool. I'm gonna turn off my webcam. This will be your show, and then yeah, cool. All right.
Okay. I'm going to just say hi and welcome to everybody. We're going to give it a minute while you're dropping in. So far, we have about 15 attendees. I'm not sure how many we're expecting. 17. So I'll give it another minute and then I'll introduce us. And meanwhile, it looks like the chat is enabled. If folks want to say hi from, I'm assuming you're all from one classroom, but let us know. What class are you coming in from?
Where in the world? Oh, from
Ah,
Maryland.
from
Oh,
Maryland.
that's where I grew up.
Oh, really? I did not know that. I have only visited. Oh,
So,
Cali. Okay. Well, that's where I grew up. All right. It looks like we've got 18 folks here. And so, oh, I thought that they had let us know that they had a lot more than that.
it says like 25 on
Yeah.
my
Oh,
side.
does it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're counting the panelists. I'm counting attendees.
Oh,
Yeah, it'll
Well,
also be some of them will be in classrooms and stuff, so it'll be one account with
oh, okay.
people.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Paula Spence. I'm the recording secretary at the Animation Guild, which is part of the IATSE. We're local 839, and we are the union that represents artists, writers, technicians, and production workers in the animation industry. The union is the members, and they stand together to help set standards for wages and working conditions so that we can build and sustain successful careers in this creative field. Our panelists today, we'll introduce them in a moment, but represent different crafts in the industry, and they'll talk about their personal animation journeys and how they got their starts, where they are now. I personally am an art director in the industry. I'm not working right now. I started in design as a background designer, got into art direction, and I'm looking forward to getting a job again. So I'm going to introduce each of our panelists. I'm just going to say your name and some very basic information, then ask each of you in turn to just introduce yourselves. Amanda Lee is an art director and a visual development artist. Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Amanda. I graduated actually from Penn State University with an architecture degree, and I worked as an architect for a couple of years, and I found that it wasn't as creative as I had hoped for. And so I, decided to try to pivot when I was 20 or early 20s, and I booked a one-way ticket to California, and discovered it was way harder than I thought it was going to be to pivot. So I took some sort of like coursework here, not like at a college or anything, but just some local, coursework here, and built my portfolio, and then got my first job at Nickelodeon it was a prop designer and background design position on Monsters versus Aliens, which was, like maybe 13 years ago. And that was my introduction to animation, and specifically with CG pipeline. And since then, I've sort of just worked in the industry on 2D and 3D projects. I don't know, should we go through like projects we worked on, or we can do it?
Well, I'm going to go back after introductions and ask you all to tell us about your journeys into the industry and how you got your first jobs and stuff.
Okay.
So we'll get into
Sorry.
that.
Well, that's kind of the brief intro. And currently, so I've worked as an art director and also a visual development artist, background designer, prop designer, and currently I'm on Monster High, the series, as the lead visual development artist.
Awesome. Okay, so Kris Mukai, she's an animation writer in the industry.
hey, I'm Kris. Nice to see you guys. I know Paula.
Now
Yeah,
you know
I'm a writer, and you know, the main project that I worked on was I wrote on We Baby Bears at Cartoon Network, and then we were asked by the network to do a movie, so I wrote on that, and then the network asked us for like a spin-off for that series called We Baby Bears. And that was a really interesting switch because Cartoon Network is kind of known as like the storyboard driven studio. They don't do a lot of like scripted episodes, but this series was a scripted episode. So it was really fun to get to like just like churn out scripts for like these adventures. And yeah, I guess and I'm from Maryland.
Yeah. Did you go to school for animation, Kris?
No, I went to school for illustration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got into writing, and you're not even drawing.
Got into it. Well, yeah.
You
I
can
mean,
tell us more about
that's
that later.
I know. I was telling you earlier. I was like, it's kind of a journey.
It is.
Yeah, Amanda, it's so cool that you study architecture too. Like, I always feel like so insecure. Like, I didn't go to school for animation, but it's like, well, we still had our life experiences, and I'm sure you learned a ton of stuff through architecture that
Yeah.
helps today. But,
I didn't go to school for animation either. Illustration too. So Kris Wimberly, storyboard artist, director, producer, podcast producer. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into our questions.
Okay, sure. So yeah, Kris Wimberly, I did go to school for animation actually. Well, sort of. I wanted to go to school for animation, but my parents said, yeah, right. So I tricked them by telling them I was going to go to school for graphic design. And so they said, oh, I know what that is. Okay. And then when I got there, I switched my major. But that's just because I knew I had a plan. It's not that I just was being defiant. And then, so I actually double majored in illustration and animation because I wanted to be super well-rounded. I actually didn't get to do all the art camps and art classes and all that stuff that my peers did. So I had to kind of double down to be competitive by the time I graduated. So I did graduate with honors, got right into the industry, almost right out of school, like less than a year out of school, which I guess in many people's experience, they would consider that to be right out of school. And I've been in the industry now for just over 15 years. I currently am, oh boy, so I'm director on a show called Firebuds at Disney. I also am supervising director on a show that we just finished the pilot for. So we're going to be doing the whole pilot testing and all that stuff for that show. I'm creator and EP of my own show that's in development at Disney. And I'm signing on to be supervising director on a fourth show starting in 2 months at Disney. And then I also have my own animation studio called Studio Smokescreen, which has several projects in development, including a feature and a couple of adult primetime shows and all kinds of stuff. So.
Okay, we're done. Good night, everybody.
I know. I always hate that question.
Well, okay. So you kind of got into a little bit about from our question one. So I'm going to let you finish and then I'll go back to Amanda and Kris. You mentioned a little bit about your journey into animation. How did you get your first job?
So when I was in school, I heard about this thing called internships. And I was like, what? What is that? And so they said, go talk to that teacher. So I did. And that's how I found out about what internships are. And so I made it my mission to find one. And I was offered 2 at the same time. So I had my first of many, many, many difficult career decisions to make. But the one that I picked was the one that worked for me. And that's the important thing I can specify right there, is that I picked what worked for me, which is I chose to go to Nickelodeon. And I interned on this really little known show called SpongeBob SquarePants, which then led to a job as a production assistant, which then led to a job production assistant on SpongeBob, which then they also transitioned me, whatever you want to call it, into a storyboard revisionist, which is where I wanted to be, was in storyboards, and that's how I got into the industry, was by following that path, which, you know, I will be the first to say is not for everyone. It just really depends on so many factors, but that way worked really well for me.
Excellent. Thanks, Kris.
Hmm.
Amanda, how about your journey into animation? How did you get your first job after switching gears and coming to California?
Mhm. I kind of went through the regular sort of brute force way, I guess. I kind of had a similar experience to Kris in that my parents also, I originally wanted to major in art, and my parents were like, "What? No." So that's why I ended up in architecture, because I thought that would have been a good, you know, basically combine my, math skills and then also my art skills. But my true passion was always in art. I've always like drawn. So, after I graduated and then sort of came to California, I realized that you really needed a really strong portfolio. And I did not have any, like my architecture portfolio was just buildings, construction drawings, that sort of thing. So then I took classes at Concept Design Academy and then also CG Master Academy, I think, CGMA. Um, and basically I built a portfolio. It took me about maybe a year or so of coursework, and just did it every day. And then basically started just submitting that portfolio to everybody I knew, anybody in the network, submitting it to recruiters. And then the way that I actually got my first job was I was submitting it to Kung Fu Panda, the TV show at the time. They passed on my portfolio, and then that portfolio got passed to somebody who was starting up on Monsters versus Aliens, and I think they saw something in my portfolio. And then that was basically how I ended up with my first job. And then it starts off with freelance, and then once I proved myself with the freelance, then I got my first full-time job.
Wow. Okay, you did it the hard way, just really just
Brute force.
powering your way in. That's awesome. And then Kris, how about you? How'd you get into animation and get your first job?
My first job was storyboarding for Adventure Time. So I was living in New York and I was working as a freelance illustrator and like not making any money. And going, gosh, I sure wish there was another way to do this. But the thing that I think got me into like the studio was that I have been drawing my own personal comics since like high school, basically. And I was in like the comic club in school, and we would write and draw these comics, and then we would print them, and then we would go to like SPX or like MoCA, and like we would exhibit at shows. Like we would organize these anthologies and then make our own, stories and comics and print them and sell them to people. And I feel like that's how I got, my name out there. And so Adventure Time was like really interested in hiring comic artists. So I was seeing a lot of friends like move out to LA, and they were like, yeah, we have to join this union when we move out here. And I was like, what? And I was like, I want that. Let me in. So I jumped at the chance to freelance. And then maybe like a year or two after doing the freelance, I got a revisionist job on We Bare Bears. So I worked as a revisionist for a little bit, and that's why I moved out here. And then was doing some storyboarding, but the thing that I really like about working in animation is the storytelling. So I really wanted to like get in on the writing side of things, because like my revisionist office was right next to the room where they did all the story meetings, and every day I'd be like drawing and I would just hear just like the loudest laughter like all day, and I was like, this seems fun, like I want to do that. But yeah, and then I did like a trial writing week on Bears, where I would come in and sit in the writing room, and at the end of that week the line producer was like, so do you want to come in on Monday and just start full time? And I remember being like, so happy that I like left the office and immediately just like ran into like a glass display case that had all these like toys in it, and all the toys like fell over, and I was like, I have to go. But yeah, that's like that. So that's like the journey from like being on the drawing side to moving into the writing side, which is not, it doesn't really feel like a very common like pathway to getting to the writing side. A lot of people, if they see that you're like a board artist or that you draw, they don't really consider that you can also write, even those board driven episodes are all written by the board artists. So those board artists are doing the writing as well.
Yeah. That gets us into our next question. What about your craft, and what does a typical day look like for you in your job when you're working? I'm Kris. Do you want to answer that since you're already talking about
Oh, talking about writing
your
stuff? Yeah.
days?
Right. I feel like writing a writing day is pretty simple. It's sort of a lot of it depends on where you are in the story. You're either like brainstorming or you're trying to break a story. So you're in a room and you're just hashing out, what should this story be about? What do those beats look like? What's the character's like emotional journey? What kind of like fun action sequences do we want? Do we want music here? It's a lot of just like sitting around a table and like hashing it out. So you have to be really good at just, you know, visualizing stuff and then like explaining it verbally to someone who can't see what you're visualizing. It's really crazy. And like, I think that was like the hardest thing to like learn moving from the drawing side into the writing side, was that I couldn't just, go into my drawing cave and like draw it for people. I had to like find a way to explain it in a different way that people could see it and then like move on and get to the heart of the story. So we're either like in meetings or we're just like doing straight writing. And then the other big thing is like addressing like network notes. So like at any round of the story, you're going to get like notes from your executives or the network, and then just figuring out like how to, like, what's the heart of the notes, how to address them, how to move the story in a way that satisfies like the story needs that you need and like what the network needs to see.
Okay. How about you, Kris Wimberly?
My days are blinding.
Just pick
I
one of your jobs to describe.
Okay. So as a director, let's talk about that. So as a director, like my job is to really sort of like oversee entire episodes. So I am coming from mostly TV. I've definitely done some feature work, but like my wheelhouse and like my passion is for TV. So working on a TV show, generally there'll be at least two, sometimes three directors per show, and then you're assigned a number of episodes over the season. So on the let's say with like Firebuds, there's two directors. So we break up the shows by odd and even numbers. And so I have to oversee half of all of the episodes for the show. And with that, there is different categories of or different types of director. I'm what we call an episodic director, which means that I get to sort of have a hand in everything from literally like the story, like from when it's written all the way until through like shipping it to even doing the overseas like animation, working with the overseas team, like seeing that part of the process through. So I'm really fortunate I get to see all of it and have a hand in all of it, which really keeps the integrity of the episode intact all the way through, because I'm there when somebody like Kris, who will write the episode, to make sure I understand what she wants. I understand what the beats are for like the story arc or emotional or whatever it is, the jokes even. Like I know what those are. I know how to like really open them up and make sure that they play on TV to the audience so that they know exactly how to perceive the information and how to go along the ride for the story. And then as it goes down the pipeline into storyboards, obviously I'm directing the board artists. Okay, so this is what Kris was trying to get through on her story. This is how we're going to tackle that. Then when it goes to the art department and works with somebody like Paula, an art director, then I'll just say, hey, like it would be great if we can get these designs as preliminary things just so we can start boarding effectively to make sure that scale's in order. If it's an environment, we really need to know like these story points are going to take place. Can we make sure that these things are going to happen? And then it may go to characters and props and whoever, or like Amanda to do backgrounds if she's doing that. And we'll say like, can we make sure this happens? The character is going to be this big, by the way. Here's like some of the boards. Can you make sure that all fits? So seeing that all the way down through the pipeline until it's time to take it into animatics where we, make sure it plays the way it's going to play on screen, get it all prepared. I work with all the production team to prepare it to go out the door to our outsourcing partners. That's what we call them now, outsourcing, because they're not always overseas, right? And then, making sure the animation's working and intact when it starts coming back, things like that. So the upside and downside, depending upon everybody's personal perspective of doing the work, the upside and the downside is that my day consists of a lot of meetings where I don't really get to draw as much anymore as I used to. But when I do, it's very fun and I still enjoy it. And there's nothing like it, especially when you're communicating an idea that's really hard to explain verbally. But it is a lot of meetings. Yeah.
That's actually what I always say when I talk about being an art director is it's a lot of this typing and blah, blah, blah talking.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Amanda also is an art director and visual development artist and a designer. So Amanda, about your craft, what does your typical day look like? You also choose any of your
I
different
think I'll
roles.
just talk about sort of visual development because it's we've kind of already talked a little bit about leadership. Art directing is definitely more of a leadership position and it's a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
Talking. You're not drawing very much. So I'll talk a little bit more about the visual development side. Typically when you graduate, you'll probably be, joining a team as an individual contributor. So that might be, prop designer, character designer, background designer, maybe effects. And so what a typical day would look like is typically you might have a meeting at the beginning of the week and you'll basically be given a list of things that need to be done. They're called assets. So maybe I'm given, 10 assets that need to be completed by, the end of the week or within 2 weeks. And that's the time that you'll spend with your art director and to sort of maybe watch an animatic and discuss sort of, what the intention of the background is or the asset that you're working on is. That's also your time to ask any questions, if you have any, about, the direction. Maybe you have some ideas, you can like kind of bounce ideas off your art director. And then basically you're just left alone after that, typically. So I might, it's basically for schedule wise, it's up to me to determine how quickly I work and at what pace, basically. So if I have 10, backgrounds, I might split them up like, 2 per day. Other designers might do all the pre-design first and then just do all the cleanup next. The benefit of sort of being an individual creator is that you have a lot of flexibility and not a lot of meetings, and you do spend a good amount of your time designing, developing, having the sort of the fun of the artistic side. And then, there might be one check-in meeting at some point. Some art directors like having a check-in meeting to talk about the pre-design just to make sure it's going in the right direction. So you don't get too far and then, all of a sudden have to revise a bunch of stuff. And then once you get that okay, you kind of go through the rest of it and then you turn it all in by Friday. And then the next week, it, starts all over again.
And what's your favorite part of the job, Amanda? Like, what is the best part?
I think the drawing is my favorite part and the designing. That's like, I think that's the best part because you actually get to use your creativity and you get to sort of put your own artist's eye or take, based on your own experiences and, your ideas. And that's where you get to like really make an impact in the cartoon pipeline.
Cool. Kris, best part of your job. Kris Mukai. Sorry.
And when I saw the names of the people that were going to be on this panel, I was like, oh my God, another Kris with a
Another
K.
KRIS Kris.
Yeah. Best part of my job, I think it's just being around really funny people all the time. It's like wild. I was talking to a friend about this earlier where it's like, yeah, you work on a show and you like kind of forget, some of the stuff that you wrote, or you forget about, like the project itself, but you always remember like the people that you were working with and like how fun it was to like collaborate with them. It's just the collaboration part of animation is really exciting and great.
That is excellent. Thank you. And Kris Wimberly, best part of your job, any of your jobs.
Well, so yeah, I was thinking about how to answer that, and I think the best part is a through line through everything, which is I'm really privileged to be in leadership positions where I get to help bring out the best in other people's work. I think that's pretty rewarding because, especially for people who really care about their craft, like trying to help them make their stuff better. And when I say better, it's not because I'm the director, do what I tell you to do. Like better as in like, oh, okay, I get the joke you're trying to do. You missed this step in your joke and now the joke works, right? And then they go, oh, and now they'll know how to execute that type of humor like throughout their career, right? So I think that part is probably one of my most favorite things. Yeah, just like helping to like empower other storytellers and get their ideas across. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Back to the questions. So I have been in the industry for a while, and sometimes I have days when I go, oh my God, I wish I can't believe I'm learning that right now at like 25 years in or something. So what are some things from each of you that you wish you knew when you were trying to get into the industry, or like maybe in school, just anything you wish that like, if I had known that before, I'd be in a better place than I am in now. Anything. And just whoever wants to go first, go.
I can go.
Yay.
I think one of the things that I didn't realize was that animation was a pipeline. So it's just, it's a kind of like in a factory, everything has a step. And then so our crafts are sort of based on each of those steps. So, visual development artist kind of covers everything, but it really behooves you to sort of specialize in a specific craft. It's a much easier way to get into the industry, in my opinion. So, that might be props, and you're focused on props and you're good at doing all kinds of props and all different kinds of styles. Backgrounds is another one, characters is another one. I think that's a very, it doesn't mean that you're going to only do that for the rest of your career, but it's a good way to help you get into the industry because you are already specialized and very, very good at designing, one specific craft. So I think that's a nice.
That's excellent. You know what? I'm gonna jump in. When I got my first job, also on SpongeBob, I was designing backgrounds, and I remember having a moment 3 months in where I like to ask questions, and I figure I'd learn a lot that way. So I had a lot of questions, and then there was a point 3 months in where I thought about asking a question, and I thought, oh, no, I already know the answer. Oh, I think I know what I'm doing now. Like 3 months of a lot of questions, a lot of work. And then I felt like, okay, I do know what I'm doing. I know I can get better, but I don't know. It helped understand those basic things. Like, yes, that I am focused on this one thing. I think that's a great answer, Amanda. Chris, how about you? What's something you wish you knew? Just jump right in.
I don't know about something that I wish I knew, but I was thinking about something that I learned from like coming from outside of animation, like I was a freelance illustrator for a long time and I just worked like a bunch of different random jobs and stuff. And it got me really comfortable asking money questions, like really uncomfortable questions, like how much does this pay? Can you pay me more? Just getting comfortable with like advocating for yourself and being like, hey, my job responsibilities have changed. And I think it's really time that we start talking about compensating for some of the extra work that I've been doing. And blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's like it's not like a skill that you are taught. You kind of just have to like force yourself to do it and like
Yeah.
get it over with. And the more that you do it, the more comfortable you're gonna feel doing it, and the more it's just not gonna feel like a huge deal every time that you're like, because you're in animation and you're not on a job forever, so you're constantly bouncing around and talking to new people, and therefore you're negotiating a lot, and you're negotiating for yourself and advocating for yourself, and it's just something to think about. Like, if there's any way that you can get practice doing that, just go for it, because people are allowed to say no, and just getting comfortable with even just getting comfortable even asking the question, I think, is something that's really valuable before coming into any kind of industry and stuff, and asking people how much they get paid for their job. Such an uncomfortable question, but you got to do it.
Yeah. How about you, Kris Wimberly?
Yeah, I struggle with this question only because like yourself, Paula, like if I didn't know something, I just went and got the answer. Like
Well,
I had
there you
no,
go.
yeah, just ask questions. I mean, I feel like so much of my career path was made on really just sort of understanding all of the options or all the courses of action that you could take, and then choose, oh, okay, here's one. Here's what I wish I knew. You're always taught ask questions, like we just told you, which is great advice. Like, ask a lot of questions and ask for advice. Also a really good move. But one thing that I don't think is taught enough, that I guess I wish I would have known earlier, is that you have to take the average of all the advice, right? Like, nobody's one piece of advice is going to work like a magic bullet for you. And so you have to still like rely on your own gut instinct, because you have to take advice and take feedback or take direction, whatever it is, and make it fit who you are so that it's truthful and organic. Otherwise, people will be off put by whatever it is you're trying to accomplish if you're doing it just as some sort of parroted way of something you were told, right? And I think that that probably doesn't get taught enough, that you have to, like Kris is saying, you have to kind of trust, like make yourself do something and trust that you can do it. But yeah, I think that's probably a good one.
Thank you.
You kind of have to be your own guiding light in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
Which is scary, to trust yourself to do that.
Yeah. I think thinking about asking for those mentoring and advice from other people, you gotta imagine yourself in that position as well, giving other people advice. Like, if you can understand and appreciate what you're getting from other people, should, I think, inspire you to do the same thing for others, and
Good point.
encourage them to like do these things like you guys are doing right now. You guys are here on this panel sharing, your journey, and opening paths, hopefully, to the folks that are here today. So we've got about 10 minutes left for questions, and I've got 3 questions left. So I'm going to combine 2 of them. one, what are the biggest challenges you've faced in the industry? And what do you hope to accomplish as an artist in the animation industry? Or, what do you hope to accomplish? Amanda, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah. Biggest challenges. I think there's a lot of challenges, but one of the, I guess, kind of related to what I'm saying earlier, when you specialize a lot, some of the challenges are that people think that that's the only thing you can do and you're a one-trick pony. So I think in my own career that I've kind of sort of come across that. I started off mostly in backgrounds and design, and then a lot of people didn't think that I could paint. So, the way to get over that is sort of you have to, show people that you can do it. People will not hire you based on the you telling them that, oh, trust me, I can do it, So you have to have it in your portfolio. Maybe you post it on Instagram, post it on social media. It's one of those things where you can do it, but people are not going to give you that opportunity until they see evidence that you can do it. So I think that's one thing that, for me, I kind of always relied on my job to get me the next job. I mean, that item would go into my portfolio, but then what I found was it was always black and white work because I was only doing design work. So I had to force myself to start, putting color work in there, and then eventually, you can build out a portfolio that's more well-rounded and you can get more access to other opportunities. The next one I think is making that jump from being a designer into a leadership position. I think that's sort of like intangible qualities that are hard to prove. And I think that has a lot, how I overcame that was a lot of networking, and becoming sort of showing people that I can do the job, but then also that I have the ability to, have conversations with people, be eager to learn, maybe have difficult conversations also. And that sort of proves to people or shows people that you have those possibly have those leadership skills to, for them to provide you with an opportunity into leadership. And then what was the last one question?
What do you hope to accomplish?
Right now, just continuing to art direct, but eventually I think maybe possibly become showrunner, or maybe just try to create something that's my own that gets shown to the world, and maybe and then maybe also I would love to sort of do a feature as well. I've mostly done TV series, but feature I think would be really great too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. How about Kris Mukai? Challenges you faced and what do you want to accomplish?
Challenges, I mean, yeah, the whole if there's only cats in your portfolio, no one's gonna believe that you can draw a dog type thing. That's that's just you continue to come across that no matter what you do. And it felt yeah, when I started writing, it felt like I had to convince people no, I know how to write. And even now I'm I keep having to prove that I can write scripts and stuff. And it's I spent, the past 5 years writing scripts, I can do it, but you really got to show people or else they are not gonna get it. And also just being intentional with what you want people to know about you. So when I was storyboarding, I was trying to get information on how to become a writer and how to make that happen. And I would be asking writers hey, how did you get into writing? What was that journey for you? But what I really should have been asking was what I really should have been saying was, I want to become a writer. Can you tell me how to make that happen? Just as straightforward as that. And it's tough to be straightforward. And then the other thing that was tough just in a writing standpoint was I spent my whole I grew up a total introvert. I was drawing all the time, not really going out and being extroverted. But when you work in a writing room, you really have to be super extroverted. And that was a skill that I had to learn and just embrace and figure out how to you gotta kill your ego, and you gotta not feel like you're gonna be embarrassed after everything that you say. And so yeah, a lot of just getting comfortable talking was tough. But and then for things that I want, yeah, I think I would really love to run a show, and just keep writing like interesting, fun stories. I kind of just want to hear people laugh at my jokes. Like if I could make that happen for the rest of my life, it'd be pretty sick. But yeah.
That is great. How about you, Kris Wimberly? Challenges and what do you hope to accomplish?
My challenges are my challenges were and maybe still are, I don't know, that I have to remind myself to kind of like check my hubris at the door a little bit, because like kind of like what everybody's been talking about, like you have to believe that you can do something to a certain point, but also you can't just rest on that. You have to actually show people. And much in that same way, you have to be open to realizing that you're not that great, right? And there's 20 other people who are better than you, right? And so what became a really valuable tool for me was to learn, well, first of all, to learn that lesson, and then secondly, to employ it, right? Like I have to ask, how do I get better at this thing? Like I was constantly asking directors, if I want to become a director, how do I get better at these boards? How do I showcase that I can direct? How can, do these kinds of things? Because then people give you the answer, like, and then it's up to you to, apply those. But at least, that's a big part of the battle, is realizing that if you're not getting the work that you want, there may be something wrong that you need to fix, and you need to like take a real hard critical look at your work or yourself, like if you're difficult to work with or not open to feedback or whatever the case might be. Like there's a lot of things that go into that may need some exploration, I think. So that was a challenge for me, is like realizing that you're not always as ready as you think you might be, right?
Yeah.
And taking the time to figure out what that is that you're missing.
How about something you want to accomplish?
Something I want to accomplish is I mean, I really just want to continue growing what we're doing with Studio Smokescreen, because it's so important. I think the work that we're trying to do, which is to really believe and prove that stories are for everyone. And that doesn't just mean that the stories that we're telling, but also the people that we're hiring to make those stories, right? And doing a lot of work to really open up what true, diversity and inclusion looks like in the industry. And so we're doing a lot of really amazing things that like I'm so excited about, that everybody's gonna find out in about 1, 2, 3 years from now when stuff comes out. But we're doing all the work now, so like that I just want to continue with that, because I think that work is desperately needed, and that's where I'm putting a lot of effort.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So we'll wind up with one last question and then we'll get to some Q&A. So you guys, I introduced us as members of the Animation Guild, but we haven't talked that much, although Kris gave us her clue when she was working in New York and like heard about the union and wanted in. So what does being in the union mean to each of you? And I'm just going to say, I'm going to ask you each to answer, but whoever wants to go first, just jump in.
Oh, looks
We
like
lost Kris.
Yeah.
She's going to come back. She got scared. So
Okay.
Amanda or Kris, would you like to answer the question? Like, what does the being in the union mean to you, or what do you get out of it, or how does it help you in your career?
Yeah.
Do you
Oh,
wanna- go ahead.
I'll keep mine short. It just means to me it's support, right? Like it's knowing that you can go to someone or some people that have answers and who are willing to give you those answers, and in some cases willing to help you fight to get those answers if that's what's needed. But that is kind of the big thing. I think one of the big draws to unionization is just knowing that you're not, like like a freelancer and gun for hire, you're just kind of floating out there, trying to wrangle work. But being part of the union, there's like a big network there that supports each other and making sure that nobody's floundering.
Cool. How about you, Amanda?
I think being in the union means that you have a collective group of people, at least to me, a collective group of people that you can fight together with. I think a lot of times if you're just by yourself, it's really hard to know what is the standard, what if you're being treated well, if you're not being treated well. And I think collectively, when you have a bunch of people working together, you can communicate about those things, about wage transparency, about, things that are happening on other productions that might not be, above board. And, you can find out about those things. And that in turn helps you, fight on behalf of yourself or advocate on behalf of yourself. I think also it's a really great way to sort of fight our corporate overlords. It's, like these companies are always going to try to get you to do the most work for the, least amount of money. And I think when you have all of these people collectively fighting on behalf of, ourselves, the union, it just makes your voice that much stronger to be able to, stand up for yourself.
Yeah. If we're all shouting, "You're not paying me enough," or "These expectations are not reasonable," then it's easier for you to say it together than just stand in a corner crying. Kris Mukai, what does being in the union mean to you?
Well, was I the only one that got booted off?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You disappeared all of a sudden.
I think my Zoom just like froze, and I was like, this is the question that I wanted to answer.
Oh, well, you're going
yeah,
to
I'll just,
right now.
Yeah, I'll back to what I was talking about before. I was doing freelance illustration for a long time, and that is where you are like every part of the job is your responsibility. And when you're freelancing, you send an invoice and then you have to wait 30 days. And usually the magazine will not send you the money in those 30 days. And then you have to call them up and say, and you got to twist their arm for them to pay you for the work that you handed in on time. So I was like getting really annoyed by that. And there's not really like a illustrators union in New York or anything like that. There's, a network of people that are working this job, but there's no like real, there's not like this, labor law. There's not like this structure of, people who had been in the industry a long time that you could go to. And I was like, I need a union. I need people that have seen it, to share their experience with me so that I know, what to look out for on these jobs, and to just having someone to answer questions about, what do I do if the company doesn't pay me? Just something as basic as that is really valuable. So
Yeah.
that's why when my friends were like, I don't know, I had to join this union. I was like, let me in now. I gotta get out to California. Like, I gotta go. And yeah, I didn't learn anything about unions until moving out here. So it's all like new information. So the sooner that you can become familiar with unions and what they can do for you, arm yourself with knowledge, the sooner the better.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of a family in a way. It's a community too that you can depend on and to be there for you. Hopefully that we all stand together and fight for each other.
Yeah, I love union meetings because you get to meet people from all different kinds of studios, and it feels I was at Cartoon Network for a super long time. It felt very easy to just kind of like, silo myself off as like just a Cartoon Network person and be like, these other studios, like, I don't know what it's like working for them. But, you meet people at union functions and, you can it sort of demystifies like the yeah, just like it's just another workplace, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good way to make connections and find your next job too. Okay, so I'm going to jump into some questions. We have, I am an animation student graduate at Drexel University and struggling to start a project, being motivated after college. Any tips? I mean, Amanda was talking about this, the challenge she set herself. Anybody want to answer?
Well, for me, like I am I know this about myself, is that I'm very motivated by not myself, but by someone else. So if you can rope a friend in to be accountable for on this project, that's why, you know, doing anthology projects or like collaborative projects with your friends, I think is a really good way to go. And it also, especially if you're doing an animation project, it really helps to get a group together, and then you start building those skills of like communicating with each other and trying to figure out, you know, how the end product needs to look, and you know, just getting used to working with different types of people, and what does that organizing look like, what does that communication look like. It's really a good skill. That's why I really liked being in like a comic club in school, because we were always trying to do collaborative projects like this, and it just felt like a pretty good primer on, you know, working in the workspace where you're meeting new people that you don't know super well, but we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Kris or Amanda, anything?
Yeah, I have a book recommendation that really helped me. The book Atomic Habits. There's like any number of reasons why you don't want to start projects, but for me, a lot of times it's just this fear of starting something new, and you just, I don't know, there's just too much pressure, and you put all this expectation and all that stuff. And I think, you know, one of the things with Atomic Habits is you just, you know, you force yourself to start, and maybe you just do 5 minutes a day, and you just start with 5 minutes. And you know, if you get through those 5 minutes and you feel like stopping, okay, you know, and you do another 5 minutes the next day. But what you generally happens is once you get over that like hill of starting, you generally find that it's not as bad as you think it's gonna be. So then you just, you know, once you make it through 5 minutes, you just keep it going. And then the key is just, you know, small steps every day builds up to a lot more. And even though you might not see that daily, but you know, at the end of 30 days, you'll see the progress of, you know, even if it's 5 minutes for a day for 30, you know, days, it's still quite a bit of work. So that's something that helps me when I get into like a big slump. I just say, okay, 5 minutes, just start with 5 minutes. I just force myself to start on something with no expectations, you know, and then generally I find that, you know, once you get that start going, the flow is a lot better.
Yeah, once you're in, you're like, this is fun. You're like,
Yeah, you're like, why did I not even start? It's like not that bad, you know.
You're
I
making
was gonna
yourself
say,
laugh.
you probably spend 10 minutes. I bet you
Yeah.
go over
I'll spend
your
like
5
2 days worrying about the thing, and then I start the thing, and I was like, oh, why didn't I just start it? You know, like.
Okay, so we have a writing specific question. Could you talk about if it's possible to break into writing for animation if you can't draw very well?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
are writing and drawing both required skills for the most
No.
part?
Yeah, you can break in as a writer. It's I mean, it's almost, I don't want to say it's better, but if you're coming in and saying I'm a writer from the get-go, then people believe that you're a writer. Whereas if you know, my website, which really needs to be updated, is all drawing stuff, and it is like actively working against me for finding work, because people look at that website and they're like, this is a person that draws. I don't know if they can write, and you're like, ooh. You know.
Yeah.
So I think I would encourage you to draw, because drawing is fun, and it will help you connect with the people that you'll be working with. But in terms of just, you know, just seeing like what goes into drawing and what their, you know, perspective of it is. But in terms of like, if you can or cannot get a job, I don't think you got to worry about it too hard.
I think, Kris, you took a strange route into writing.
Really
Like,
weird
it's
route.
not the way it usually works. Usually the people in the writer's track don't have writing skills. They may have come up through production and they were a script coordinator, or they were a writer's assistant, or somehow
Or they're
blasted
like
right into
comedians
the
or
industry.
something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like in animation, especially, it almost feels easier to become a writer if you're coming from like a stand-up or an improv type background.
Yeah.
Those skills are really useful in the writing room also. But yeah,
Okay.
super weird. I will say that coming from boards has been kind of great because I feel like I can write some really good scripts that board artists don't hate. You know?
That's true. Okay, we've got one that's probably a Kris Wimberly question. I was able to get an internship after graduation and finished it. Yay! Now that I have passed the 6-month period after graduation, how can I nudge myself into the industry since I no longer apply to the internship requirements? Most job applications always require years of experience, which I do not have.
So yeah, this is kind of a branding problem, which we've talked about like a couple of times now from Amanda and Kris, but like, you know, if you see yourself as somebody who's still a student or a recent graduate or former student, then that's how everybody else is going to see you too. You are not part of that category, so hanging on to, oh no, I'm not that anymore, is a disservice to yourself. You need to like evolve to the next thing, which is part of like this workforce now, right? And you, much like everybody else, you have to present the skills to show that you can do the job, and you just have to keep pounding the pavement. It's not a very sexy answer, right? I apologize for that part, but like it's kind of the truth is like you need to get out there, say, this is who I am and this is what I do, take a look so that people can say, oh, great, we can use you and put you in a job. And I can tell you, as somebody who's doing all the hiring and looking at the portfolios, and I don't know what your discipline is, like what your craft is, but as somebody who looks at all those things and is picking who we're going to use, it doesn't matter if you're coming from an internship or just finished one or graduated 6 months ago or 6 years ago. Like the bottom line is, can you do the job or not? Like that's what we need to know. And then the second question is, can you do it fast enough? Right? Those are the two big things that get you a job or keep you out of a job. So if you can spend some time to rebrand yourself, and I know that sounds yucky because we're creatives here and we don't want to talk about things in business terms, but at the end of the day, it's a job. This is a business. These are companies. You need to figure out how to position yourself to look like somebody who can do the job so that you can get the job.
Yeah. I'll
Honestly,
say,
just
oh, go ahead, Kris.
honestly, just making a website that says, you know, your name and then the job that you want, and then, you know, whatever work that you put out there. Like, I feel like websites are underrated in this day and age.
Yeah.
I
And
love
Yeah.
build your portfolio. That is your portfolio. Build it like Amanda was talking about earlier. Just keep adding to it and expanding it, and you will
That's
show people that you can do the job. I'm going to jump in and say one thing that Kris, as a manager, someone who does work on staffing up shows, sometimes I want to hire a veteran, you know, but I want to hire Amanda because I know that she's going to do amazing visual development work. That is taking a big chunk of my budget, you know, because Amanda is experienced and she's got a certain pay level that she has earned. And maybe I got to hire someone who's not as, you know, pricey because they
yeah.
don't have as much experience. And we have minimum rates in our union, but we hire all kinds of rates. You know, we pay all kinds of rates. And someone like Amanda or any of these folks here can demand a higher rate. We're looking for new people that don't have experience so that we can save a little money, you know, so that we can pay Amanda more. Like this is more icky business stuff. Like,
Well,
and we hire someone who's not you know, experienced, and they're looking for the experience, and that person comes on with not the amazing skills that Amanda has, but that person's going to learn, and that's an entry level position. So we do need people to come in, and it doesn't matter to me if they've never worked in the industry anymore, as long as I can see that you can do the job, like Kris said, and do
Yeah,
it
and the other
fast enough
side,
to keep up.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
The other side to that coin real quick is hiring somebody who's less experienced also affords you more creativity. Like you're not having to break somebody's habits like that they're just so deeply rooted in, right? Because you have somebody who this is their first show, their first project, and like they're just excited to try things, or they've been experimenting with this stuff that they absorbed from Instagram, people they follow on Instagram or whatever. Whereas people who are very experienced come in and they execute, right? Like they know exactly, I forget who said it earlier, the one trick pony idea, but like I think it was Amanda that said the one trick pony thing. And that's true. Like if you get somebody who's really experienced, like they're gonna come in and do the thing you hired them to do to the other side of that coin, that point is like, yeah, great, we need that person too, but we also need people who are fresher, who give you more to work with because you can spend more time with them
Yeah.
rather than somebody who you don't have to spend that much time with. Like we know that we need to invest time in these people.
Yeah. Training, mentor.
Yeah. And to your point, Paula, that's why we can pay them more because we don't have to watch over them. Like they
Yes.
can go do their thing. It's not just that they deserve more money because they've been
Right.
around longer. It's because they know how to do the thing.
Yes.
These people, we need to invest the time, and so that's the trade-off right there. So
Yeah. And that's, when you hire folks that don't have the experience, you do have to know that like that person's going to need more time to learn and grow and master their craft, which someone who's been there long enough has already done. So they're getting on the job training, and we're all getting on the job training all the time. I think we are out of time. Is it okay if we keep going? If anybody needs
Yeah.
to drop out?
yeah, I'm being summoned. I need to,
Okay.
as you might imagine.
All
It's
right.
been awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Kris, for sharing the panel with me. Thanks for having me, BRIC and Paula. Appreciate it.
Bye,
Thank you,
Chris.
Kris.
Yeah,
you.
see ya. Sorry.
And Amanda and Kris Mukai, if you're okay, we'll go through
stay
a
another
couple
like
more
10.
questions.
Yeah, I can say for a couple more.
Okay. Looks like, okay, so I'll talk about we have one about background design. Let's give that one to Amanda. How do you recommend breaking into background design?
Okay, so I think two things. You have to decide, do you want to focus on 2D background design or CG background design? Eventually you want to know both, but just in terms of like getting in first, you want to maybe focus on one or the other. CG, obviously, you have to basically learn how to turn the sets. And what I mean by turn the sets is you have to be able to design the set, and then you have to be able to break it all apart into sort of like flatten it out. So there's like a north elevation, a south elevation, east of elevation, a west elevation. And you have to design things in a very a 3D way. So you can't cheat things like you can in 2D. So they all have to make sense if you're turning the 3D object. This is where I think if you have any sort of CG modeling experience, it can come in really handy. Doesn't mean that you have to know how to do it, but just being able to picture things in 3D and turning things is really helpful. And I think having good scale, good perspective skills is really important. And then for 2D, it's a little bit different. You just have to design sort of more of a scene. So you don't have to do that whole like breaking apart step. And for that, you also same thing. You want to have good perspective skills. You want to have good scale. And then on top of that, you need to have really good composition. So you want to think of these scenes more like a stage. If the characters are, acting and doing things, you want to set the stage for them. So you don't want to put, crazy objects behind their head where they're doing actions and it's going to obscure, the action on screen. I think that's the main, those are the main things: scale, composition, perspective. You need really good perspective skills.
And then breaking in, you got to build that portfolio,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Is
exactly. And all of those
focused
things
on-
go into your
Yeah.
portfolio. I think
And
having a variety of styles helps. So, maybe if you can, what does a bedroom look like in the Rugrats style versus, Avatar style? Those are two very different things. If you can master multiple styles, it will be much easier for you to break into the industry.
yeah. Okay. Okay, we got a couple of questions more union related. With the New York Titmouse office unionizing, do you see hope for East Coast unionization and wider unionization outside of LA County? Yes, we are there. We are doing it. Kris talked earlier about being an artist in New York, and there was a union in New York at one point that didn't do much and didn't last. But yeah, now we have studios in all kinds of places. We've got New York, we've got a studio in Puerto Rico, Texas, and here's some news: remote workers, people who are working for, oh my gosh, it's not DreamWorks. I think it's Disney feature. They have their remote artists that could be working anywhere in the country. They just organized. And so they have become a traveling lab. And they have been able to, I guess, make their demand. They haven't quite been recognized yet that they're going to be part of our contract, but we're hoping to get the whole country. And there is a Canadian Animation Guild as well.
Yeah, Titmouse was so exciting because I'm not at a studio right now, but when I am, I'm usually a union shop steward. And so like we have the shop steward Slack, and like after Titmouse unionized, I was like on that Slack and I was like, oh my God, like I know this person like from like New York, and it's someone that I met years and years and years ago when I was living there, and to see him like again in like this union space, I was like, wow. And like, I don't know, I just felt really good about it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you unionized and you're already like coming in to be a steward. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, do you remember me? And he was like, I remember you.
Oh, good. And it's great to be in an industry where you can have those moments throughout. Not quite that dramatic all the time, but it's really great to be able to go, oh my God, we've started out on the same show, or you keep crossing paths. There is a question about our negotiations, and yes, we are working on AI. I won't get too much into our negotiations for the union. When it comes to deadlines in visual development, do you need to be ready to be able to complete fully rendered pieces by the end of the work week? Amanda, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sorry, was the question, do I have to complete fully rendered pieces by
Yeah.
the end of the week?
Yeah.
It depends. So if you are a visual development artist, that typically means that you can do design and paint. And usually they should give you enough time to design the thing and paint the thing. But if you're working in a lot of times in TV series and sometimes with feature as well, you might only be doing one specific craft. So if you're a background designer, for example, you don't do color at all. You might do some shading or maybe indications of lighting, but you don't work in color at all. After you finish your background design or set piece, that will go then to a painter, and that's a different craft. So some people will just specialize in basically painting color and light. And so that person will basically get your set or the character or whatever, and they will do all the color and lighting. You don't have to worry about that. So it kind of depends on what job you have. A lot of feature viz dev, it is, you're designing and painting at the same time. That would be, I would say, more of an advanced level of job, an more advanced job. And it's a very competitive job as well. Lots of people want to be a viz dev artist. And that's why I suggest sometimes specializing, because it's a little bit easier to get in as, just BG designer first, and then you work your way up to that, or prop designer and you work your way up to that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the expectation is not to do a whole fully rendered by the end of the week. No.
Yeah, and you'll find like I've worked in like small time feature stuff that is based on TV stuff that goes onto the big screen. In visual development, it's not necessarily as structured sometimes as, you know, when you're working on episodic TV. You might have like, you know, you've got 3 projects and you're going back and forth on all of them because you know, you're focusing on one, and then when that's done, you move on to the other. Maybe by the time you get notes back on that first one, you've moved on to the third thing. So I think the big question is, do you want fully rendered stuff? And a lot of times for visual development, you are expected to go from black and white to color, or like these extremely detailed tonal things in black and white. So we did get a question about getting panelist emails. I'm going to let BRIC handle that. I have given my email out before in panels like this, and it can be really disrupting. You know, I'm sorry. Having said that, if Amanda and Kris want to put their emails in the chat, they're welcome to. But I have done that before, and then I'm getting like 10, 15, 20 emails from people that are like, look at my portfolio, help me get a job. And I'm like, I just can't. I don't have that many jobs to hand out. And I can't, reach out to BRIC. And
I was gonna say, if you want to reach out to me, maybe Instagram is better. That way, you know, it's like in there, and if I have time, I can go in. But just, you know, don't expect. We all have like very busy lives, and it's hard to give personalized feedback to everybody. But you can reach out to me. It's Amanda Lee Art on Instagram. I'll just type it down.
Yeah.
And if I have time, I will try to go through, you know, and I can give you some pointers and stuff like that. But I, you know, just don't expect like full, you know, I just don't have enough time.
Mentoring program.
Yeah, I don't have enough time. Yeah.
Okay, great.
You can, if you have any, you can reach out to our contact one if you ever need just like find some general information. But yeah, as Paula mentioned, some of the portfolio reviews and stuff will be a little trickier. We do have certain sessions I'll open up for portfolio reviews through BRIC, so you can also I can send the newsletter page sign up form in a second here.
The other thing I recommend you follow is the Animation Guild on Instagram, because we also do portfolio reviews. I think they happen once a year or twice a year. I don't remember.
We've been doing that. We also just started the Animation Guild Foundation. We don't have our website up yet, but that is, I think, is where the portfolio review is going to migrate to, we hope. And we also do panel events like this that are about like how to get your start in animation, and you can get in touch with us through that Animation Guild Instagram too, to learn about stuff like that, hear about stuff. So thank you all for coming today. I hope it was helpful, and thank you, Kris and Amanda, especially for staying a little late and finishing up questions.
Well, thanks so much for organizing this. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Paula, for fielding all the questions. And yeah, thanks again for staying late to help give everyone some extra information. So hope you all have a good rest of your day, and thanks everyone for coming out.
Thank you, and good luck in your careers, everybody.
Yeah, good luck, guys.
And the recording will go up in a few days, so keep an eye out for that. All right.
Great.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.